Our fellow viewers in Flokel Show, welcome yet again for a presentation which is to do with Visual Basic programming. In our previous lecture, we tried to look at data types, where we classified data types into numeric data types and non-numeric data types, and we discussed the details of how you get to write a code involving data types. This lecture, we are going to proceed and look at variables and constants and how you declare both variables and constants. But before we go to the declaration, we need to know how we write variable names. And just like the mailboxes, you must assign a name to the variable. To name a variable in VisualBasic.net, you have to follow a set of rules as follows. And for the sake of students who are sitting in for an exam, these are some of the questions which you need to know that you can be asked. What are the rules of naming variables in Visual Basic? Rule number 1, the variable name must be less than 255 characters. Rule number 2, there is no spacing which is allowed. Rule number 3, it must not begin with a number. And rule number 4, a period is not permitted. And below, we are going to look at some valid and invalid variable names which are displayed in the table below. In this case, we have valid variable names on this side. My underscore name is a valid variable name. VB 2014 is a valid variable name. Long underscore name underscore can be used is a valid variable name. Now invalid name. Here, this is invalid because of the use of a period. It's not allowed. This one is invalid because it starts with a number, a numeric number, that is. Now, this one is an invalid variable because of the inclusion of this special character. Then we look at how we declare variables. In VisualBasic.net, you need to declare the variables before you can use them. To declare a variable, you assign a name to the variable and state its data type. If you fail to do so, the program will run into an error. And in fact, this, to be specific, is what we refer to as a syntax error. Variables are usually declared in general section of the code windows using the dim statement. For the purpose of students writing codes, I have to repeat this. Anytime you are declaring variables, we always use the keyword dim in Visual Basic. We now look at the syntax to declare a variable in VisualBasic.net. We have dim variable name as data type. If you want to declare more variables, you can declare them in separate lines, or you may also combine them in one line, but use a comma to separate each variable with from the other, as follows. This is when you are using multiple lines to declare variables. The first variable, dim variable name 1 as data type 1. Dim variable name 2 as data type 2. Dim variable name 3 as data type 3. Or you can still declare the same on the same line. Dim variable name 1 as data type 1. Then you use a comma. Then you will not repeat dim because already it is starting. You have variable name 2 as data type 2, comma, variable name 3 as data type 3. We now look at one of the examples which is involving the use of variables. This example declares two variables of the string type and concatenates them using a percent sign, create a project and insert a button and name as button show. Of course, you remember we talked about events. So when you talk of button show, you are saying that show is an event, and change its text to show message. You can assign a value to the string using the assignment operator. Okay, and this is how you have this private sub button show underscore click. For the students who are using VB.NET to write programs, they are getting problems when it comes to the first statement in private sub, because previously in Visual Studio 6 we never used to have this part, which is sender as object, comma, e as event arguments, brackets, handles, button show dot click. But for very simple reason, students, when you come across this, you'll realize it's a very simple thing. First of all, this statement which is in brackets is repeated all through. Nothing changes here. Whether you are doing it in a button, whether you are doing it in a form, whether you are doing it in a label, it remains as that. So you can easily master this. Sender as object, comma, e as event arguments, into brackets.